The City of Albuquerque Public Art Urban Enhancement Division and Department of Arts and Culture proudly present Take Another Look. Built on the foundation of two city ordinances, Art in Municipal Places, and the Urban Enhancement Trust Fund, the Public Art Urban Enhancement Division provides funds to artists to create art for the public, as well as arts organizations for arts and cultural programming. Join us as we discuss everything related to funding artists in the public realm with host Joni Palmer.
Hello, I'm Joni Palmer, and welcome back to Take Another Look at Albuquerque's Public Art. Thank you for tuning in today for the third and the final episode about appreciation and appropriation in public arts in New Mexico. In this episode, I will be talking with Manny Manriquez, the Deputy Director of Innovation and Commercial Development for the city's Aviation Department, long title, and Regina Chavez Puccetti, former Arts Program Manager at the Albuquerque International Sunport, amongst other things. We'll hear a little bit more about that in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my guest today. Manny serves as the Innovation and Commercial Development Deputy Director at the City of Albuquerque's Aviation Department.
That's right.
In this role, Manny is the lead spokesman and subject matter expert for the Dream of Flight Renovation and Concessions Redevelopment Project at Albuquerque International Sunport. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure, Joni. Great to be here.
Yeah. Regina Chavez Puccetti has lived many lives. She recently retired from the University of New Mexico, where she was the Director of Arts Leadership and Business, the graduate and undergraduate minors program, faculty advisor for the BA in an interdisciplinary arts degree. She was a senior lecturer to faculty member in the College of Fine Arts, campus project manager for the Strategic National Arts Alumni Project. She also taught nonprofit arts administration, leadership for creatives, fundraising for the arts, and the ALBS internship program. Ms. Chavez worked for the City of Albuquerque as the arts program manager at the Albuquerque International Airport Aviation Department. She also worked in nonprofit, local government, and private sectors in various leadership, staff, and volunteer capacities. So thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, so a little bit of background. In the previous two episodes, I spoke with city staff, arts administrators, and artists about the work that they are doing and how they are engaging in the often uncomfortable but necessary conversations around the topic of cultural appreciation and cultural appropriation. During these previous episodes, we spent some time exploring and defining terms. Some of the terms we've discussed are awareness, vulnerability, resilience, inspiration, intention, respect. Today, we are going to focus on two terms, authenticity and responsibility. We will be exploring what these terms mean in relation to the complexities of cultural appreciation and appropriation with regard to the work that the city's Aviation Department, the Albuquerque International Sunport has done through the Dreams of Flight Renovation and Concessions Project, including recent artwork acquisitions and commissions in partnership with Albuquerque Public Art Program. So we'll talk about how those programs come together. So before we get started, let's dive into kind of the roles that you're playing in this particular circumstance. So Manny, I'll start with you.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the city's Aviation Department? And I'm going to add a little bit to that.
Sure.
Is this the same thing as the Albuquerque International Sunport, or are these distinct entities?
Good question. So everything that is the City Aviation Department encompasses both the Sunport and Double Eagle 2. So essentially what that means is the Aviation Department for the city runs both airports. We operate both airports.
Okay.
Now, obviously, everybody knows about the International Sunport, but Double Eagle 2 is an important little enterprise on the west side of the city, where we also have a lot of efforts unfolding. But we're talking today about the Sunport and the arts projects, and that really is it takes up about 90% of my time and energy focusing on various different efforts at the Sunport. So.
And what do you do? What are those efforts?
Yes. So, basically running the Sunport is like running a small city. There are 3,000 people who work there every day, and about a tenth of that workforce are city personnel. And so the city folks do everything from custodial, PR and marketing, maintenance, airfield operations, security. It's very multifaceted, and of course we have a pretty broad administration to manage all these things. And so I'm part of that administration. I was appointed by Mayor Keller and became deputy director a little more than about a year and a half ago. And essentially, I oversee a good portion of those items I just mentioned. But and at the outset, you mentioned the Dream of Flight project, which is really like many projects within one big project.
Right.
Right. And so, of course, I could talk about the other duties, and they do touch upon the Dream of Flight project because, we're doing so much at the airport that you coordinate with all the different divisions of the Aviation Department. But in terms of that, the overall renovation itself, it's kind of providing executive oversight and making sure everything is moving along, on track. We're staying on budget, right? We're staying on time. Most importantly, where the arts comes in, I do sort of tuck in the Sunport Reimagined Arts Project under that umbrella of Dream of Flight, the overall renovation, but it's budgeted separately, it's managed separately, and that's something where I've gotten a lot more hands-on in partnership with the public art staff for the city, as well as all our wonderful partners who joined the selection committee, including Regina.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you're juggling a lot of things.
Yes, definitely.
So, and actually, I'll come back to another question with regard to that. Let's shift over to Regina. And you previously served as the arts program manager at the Albuquerque International Sunport Aviation Department. When did you work in that role, and what is it that you did?
Well, Joni, this was from 1998 to 2005. So this was before all these major renovations, and my role was to manage the art collection. And at the time, the collection numbered about 88 pieces of art that were acquired in the mid-'80s. And so the Aviation Department was building the rental car center around that time. It was scheduled to open around 2000. So we went through a process, a public art process, to acquire 15 works of art specifically for the rental car center.
Oh.
So in addition to that, I had together the Aviation Arts Committee that helped, the selection process. So at that end, I was an arts administrator. I was the arts program manager. In my role with this Dream of Flight Renovation Project, I'm on the selection committee, so it's interesting to be on the other side. It really is.
Oh, I bet.
But no, that was a lot of fun. That was an interesting job because not only was it rental car acquisitions, but it was also developing policies for loans, for acquisitions, for donations, for exhibitions, for repairs, maintenance, and how did the art fit into the collection, and could it be loaned out to other city departments? And all kinds of issues that would come up.
Right.
But it was primarily that. And then I also developed the Sunport Serenades, which was the performance end of it, which was a lot of fun too.
Oh, yeah.
Still going on today.
Is it really?
Yes, we still have Sunport Serenades 2 days a week.
2 days a week, okay.
Yeah.
I don't think in all the times I've flown through that I have experienced that.
Well, you must at some point. It is timing, right? We have between the hours of 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., we have live bands playing in the Great Hall. But we're actually going to be expanding that program and doing more performances in the secure side in the new food hall area.
Yeah.
See, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, that's a great space.
It is.
So can you tell us a little bit more about the Sunport Art Program collection and Albuquerque, the city's public art collection? Where do they meet, or are they totally running on different tracks?
Well, yes and no. So, yes, they intersect. So as Manny mentioned, the Aviation Department is a department of the city. So everything at Aviation is owned and operated by the city, as well as the collection. So the art collection at the airport was acquired through the public art process already established by the public art program here in City Hall.
Okay.
And so while the collection for other departments are funded through general obligation bonds. At aviation, they're funded by airport revenue bonds. So the art for the airport stays at the airport. It belongs to the airport, but the airport is city, and so it's still part of the public art collection. So separate, but yet the same, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the process still went through going to the arts board, to the department director, the arts board, the mayor, et cetera, and city council for approvals as necessary.
Okay. Well, so do other airports around the country have a similar program, and how would you kind of rank us to them, or how we're going to rank with this beautiful project that you're working on?
Many airports have art in their airports. They really do. They have small collections. Some have huge collections. Some airports are even accredited by the American Museum Association. So something as big as Phoenix or San Francisco, Philadelphia, Atlanta has a huge collection, LaGuardia. Those are all in Chicago. They're all large collections, much larger than we have here. But what we have is larger compared to a lot of other airports. So it's popular to have it, but it doesn't always mean that the collection is curated in a meaningful way. It doesn't always mean it's acquired through a public art process. It could be strictly by donations. It may not necessarily be funded by public. So it really depends on the municipality or the governing body for that airport.
Oh, okay. So you'd have to look at each airport specifically.
Yes, but the American Association of Airport Executives years ago would have conferences and would have a session strictly on airport art collections, and I've been a guest speaker at those. And so they were looking at the time for commonalities with the collections and best practices. What works well in some airports might work well in others. So that's what we would focus on.
Yeah.
Now they have entire conferences that cover this, annual conferences where you go and attend with other people who manage art projects and programs at airports and share those best practices. So it's,
Wow. Yeah. Times have changed.
Yeah, indeed.
So we've talked a bit about the Sunport Art Project in episode 1, our very first episode with Sherry Brueggemann.
Nice.
And during episode 14 with artist JP, who shared more about their mural design for the TSA queuing area, We Are the Mountain. For some background, the Sunport and Albuquerque Public Art Program partnered on the Sunport Reimagined Art Project to acquire artwork during the Dream of Flight Renovation Project. So there's lots of titles here, right? And so I see what you were saying about keeping everything on track and making sure all the pieces are coming together. So Regina, and you mentioned this, Manny. Regina, you were on the selection committee for the Sunport Reimagined Arts Project. Can you tell us a little bit about that selection committee and your role on it?
Well, the committee, there were 12 voting members on this committee, of which Manny and I were both voting members.
Okay.
And the committee was administered by the city's public art staff, which was Sherry and Noel and Mandolin. And they did not have a voting role in that. But our job on the committee was to review all the submissions. And we had about 400 submissions of letters of interest, of slides, of work to really to be considered for the different sites at the airport under the new sites that were being considered. And it was interesting to be on the other side because it's more, when you're staffing it, you're providing information to the committee. So to help them make the best decision, best informed decision. And so sitting on the other side, that's when you get to talk about, well, I don't know if I like that piece of art, or I don't, you start talking about differences in tastes and differences in, is this the right art in the right location? And so it's kind of a different conversation, but it was a lot of fun. And it was also, I think it was a really good process for us on the committee because not everybody had the same opinion about it, which is normal.
I bet. Yeah.
There were
Very
some
true.
broad differences.
Which is great, right? I mean, that's why there's going to be a pretty wide range of, and there's different types. It's not all TD.
Well, you're going to have contemporary art, you're going to have traditional art, you're going to have, and on the committee, you have, my representation, or my role was more as an arts professional, as an arts administrator and educator. That was the role I brought, and also having the history of the collection, history of the art, the aviation collection. So I was looking at it from the place of, well, we have all of this work in the collection. Do we need more of that, or are we lacking in these other areas? So really looking at it from a diversity issue, but also looking at it from not just diversity in terms of culture, but diversity certainly in terms of what's contemporary, what's traditional, the types of artists, where are they from, and how does this work resonate with our audience, the public.
Right.
Yeah.
So a couple other things before we start to dig into authenticity and responsibility is why is it important to include or invest art during the renovation, to enlarge the program? And was the call open only to New Mexico artists?
It was indeed. Yeah, so, I think nationwide we have the standard of 1% for arts when you have a big public works project. We treated this in a similar fashion. Rather than allocate a certain percentage of our construction budget, which was $90 million for the renovation project, we just set aside over $3 million, which is well over the 1% for public arts, right?
Yeah.
But Mayor Keller, our director, Richard McCurley, and I talked about this effort a lot, and we really felt committed to a couple things. One, really like doubling, tripling down on the budget, and the other was ensuring that we could get all New Mexican artists in the Sunport with the direct purchases and the commissions.
Okay.
And that was important largely because, Albuquerque International Sunport is kind of unique in the sense that it is the airport of New Mexico, right? We call ourselves the gateway of New Mexico.
Right.
A lot of other states have several large airports. We have one. And so we wanted to be very representative of the artist community that's in New Mexico. And we know that, half of our travelers are New Mexicans, and the other half, roughly speaking, are visitors.
Right.
And we wanted the New Mexicans to be proud as they flew out to see all this wonderful art created by New Mexicans. And we wanted the visitors to understand something about our culture, how we're, in contemporary ways, reflecting what we see and feel every day throughout our culture. And, we have some really wonderful historical works in our collection, but this really was I think, very deliberate effort to make sure that we were bringing in fresh ideas, new art that still is rooted in our tradition and our culture, but reflected new perspectives. And I think we nailed it, actually.
I think we did.
Well, so when is it all going to be installed? So when will it be complete? Because there's, as I've been going through the airport over the last 6 months, it's been fun to see things shifting and changing and new things showing up.
Absolutely. I mean, at this moment, we are at a critical phase in the rollout of our new concessions program, where we have opened up all but one of the restaurants in the new food hall. So the last one to come online will be Indian Pueblo Kitchen later in June.
Nice.
Super excited about that. And we just opened Cheese and Coffee about a week and a half ago. So we're in this phase now where a lot of the spaces where the artworks are going to be installed are now available for those installations to take place.
Okay.
And in some cases, the installations will take weeks, and in some cases, they'll be fabricated off-site, brought in, and installed in a matter of a day or two.
Okay.
But essentially, we're really at the precipice. We're about to have the first of the big installations, the commissioned works, begin, and that's JP's work in the TSA queuing area. And so JP should be on site within the next month or so.
Great.
But, it's an airport, so we got to work through all these things, right? Security, introducing the artists to the APD unit that's there, making sure they have all the phone numbers for myself and all my staff, and just so that when they're there, they have the support they need.
Yeah.
So it's a big logistical process.
Oh, especially for
processes.
JPs and the TSA.
Oh, exactly.
Queuing
Being
area,
right there by the screening equipment and all the nervous TSA officers looking over like, what are you doing over there? So yeah, there's a lot of work to come. But then over the coming months, several other artists that have been awarded through this process will be coming in and starting their installations. And then the really big one at the T Connector, which is the Sky Candy sort of flying lowriders, will sort of be last. And I would say we'd be all wrapped up with all the art installations by the end of 2026, roughly
Wow.
speaking.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, how long was this whole process that you were on the selection committee? How long was that?
Our process was about 2 years.
Yeah.
And our role in that is done. We've already selected everything.
Okay.
So now it's up to staff and the, their end of aviation to make this happen, and working with public art, as Manny mentioned, with contracts and logistics and installations, and that does take time.
Right. So it's a lengthy process.
Yes, it
Really
is.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about these terms, authenticity and responsibility, as a part of the decision making and everything that's happening at the Sunport. So I'll ask both of you, and you can go, whoever wants to go first. How do you define or think about these terms, and how do you think they're manifest, authenticity and responsibility, in this work that's happening at the Sunport?
Well, I think of authenticity as the process. Is it a process that is tested? Is it a process that works? I think of authenticity as the place. Is the place legitimate, and does it support art? And then, of course, authenticity of the art itself. Is what we are doing, are we acquiring art that's going to stand on its own, that's also fits into the collection as well? So that's from my perspective how I see authenticity.
Yeah. Agreed. I mean, I think I start with responsibility. As a native New Mexican, right? I grew up here for most of my childhood, and coming back, moving back in late 2021, and then starting with the city several months later, I found that this is a unique opportunity to contribute to my community, right? And contribute to the well-being of the people here. And one way we can do that is by being responsible stewards of this wonderful thing that we have, the Sunport, and all that comes with it, and the monetary resources that we have to invest in its future and in the celebration of this moment. And so I just felt a really strong responsibility to. I was kind of like the self-nominated chair of the committee, but I felt this responsibility to do it right, and to really ensure that the artists that we were bringing into the door for their presentations when they made it to the final rounds, and finally the ones who we selected, were not only representative in terms of their own cultural heritage, but that what they were reflecting about their New Mexicanness was authentic, right? So that's where I get to this question of authenticity. It is a process, and it's an exploratory process, because what felt authentic 10 years ago might not feel authentic today.
Yeah.
And we have to explore that, and we really have to challenge ourselves to, look at when an artist, and I'll use the Zia symbol, okay? Right. There's Zia symbols everywhere, and so many artists use Zia symbols in their proposals. But did they contact the Pueblo, right? Did they consult them? Did they understand what the symbology actually means to those people who created it?
Right. And
did they get the necessary permissions and treat it with the respect that it deserves? Right. And that tripped us up at times, because some artists hadn't done it. Some artists had not quite completed that process of ensuring that they're reflecting authenticity. And there are so many other examples of that, but that's kind of the one that really sticks out in my mind.
It really does. And I think Manny brings up an important point, that this committee had discussions about authenticity, about diversity, that we didn't have 20, 30 years ago about acquisitions. We never discussed diversity, in a very limited way. And this time we were looking at diversity of the art, diversity of the artists, diversity of the process itself and the discussions. We had April come in and meet with us about, reflecting what is Native American art and how does that fit into what we do have, and who is submitting as works as Native American, and are they authentic? And so
Absolutely.
there was a lot of discussion about that we did not have years ago. So it made for a very interesting discussion, and I think it was very enlightening for all of us from the committee perspective, and I think it was for the artists as well. When we had finalists come in, there was some discussion there about why they chose certain symbols and images, and did they understand what they really were, the history of those symbols. So I think we have a responsibility to the public and to the artists themselves that we have a high standard for what we do select.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah. And Regina mentioned April. So April Hale, the Aviation Department hired her as a consultant before this process began to train us, really, kind of department leadership in Native American affairs and, from the history of the tribes and pueblos that are here on this land, and also how to really respect the culture through what we are doing at the Sunport. And there's so much, that we've done over the years, starting with the Puccetti artworks that were displayed at the original old terminal building and that were acquired by Howard Hughes in the late 30s. And Puccetti is a native artist from New Mexico. And so we've got all this rich history, but how much do we know about it? And so April Hill came in and kind of gave us some different angles on,
that's great.
How to ensure that we are respecting the symbols and the culture and the history, but also understanding that these are folks who are living here today. They're not just ancient people, right?
Right.
They're our neighbors and our friends. Yeah. And then Noelle Biguet from the Public Arts team was always there with us, sitting with us, ensuring that we are reminded of these important lessons and having the awareness as we move forward in this process.
Sounds intense.
So it's intense.
Yeah,
it's intense. And that's why there was so much emotion in the process. That's why, so many times I'd look over at Regina or Sherry or somebody else, and there'd be tears in our eyes because we're learning, and some of the lessons are hard.
Right.
But the more we do that, the more we can, and opportunities like this to talk about it and have the public hear about it, I think the more that we can really try to heal some of the wounds that are still with us, and also move forward together, as a broader community.
Right.
So I love that. I mean, it's absolutely special. And that's having people, artists who are participating in this from all around the state, and from all different backgrounds. I mean, you mentioned JP, he's a Korean American who has made New Mexico their home, to Virgil Ortiz, who's from Coche de Pueblo, who's a native futurist, which just blows my mind. I love his vision. Michael Toya from Jemez Pueblo, Jody Herrera, whose home is in Taos. So many, and the lowrider artists. I mean, these guys just came in like gangbusters. It was like Rob Vanderslice and Blas Leyva and Watermelon 7, and they brought Vicente Griego and Max Baptiste with them, and Rob brought his daughter Daisha, and they rolled out the proposal like it was their heart on full display. Every single one of the awardees delivered like that.
Wow. It sounds like a unique selection process. I mean, everybody learned. You were all learning together and moving this process forward.
Yeah,
very much so. That's unique.
It is. Yeah.
And you've mentioned a couple of the challenges. Were there other challenges in doing this selection work and feeling that, this authenticity and responsibility and respect and some of the other terms I mentioned earlier, were they always on your mind?
Yes. I think so.
Was that a challenge?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really. I think given where we are globally, but especially socially, I think given where and I'm saying we as the collective we, I think there is so much awareness nowadays of community, awareness of how our responsibilities are to each other, awareness of how easy things can become divisive. And this committee did not want to go down that path. This committee was very mindful that what we did share, that our process was, while we were not expected to all agree, we were all expected to be respectful. And we
Absolutely.
did. We did. It was a wonderful process.
Yeah. I'd say the biggest challenge, if we have to identify one, is just the amount of time and energy that we had to invest in the process. I mean, that was a busy 2 years.
It was very busy.
Yeah.
There was a lot of meetings, a lot of scoring, a lot of most
Training.
of it was training, yes, and a lot of it was in most of our meetings were in person. We did manage to do a few Zoom meetings, but it was a significant commitment of time.
And these 12 committee members, all members of the community, some of whom are on the Public Arts Board, everybody gave willingly their time and their energy. I was really impressed by that because, it's in all the meetings and the scoring and obviously the presentations from the semifinalists and the finalists, but those hours and hours in your living room or in your kitchen on your computer going through all those, proposals.
Right.
And like Regina said, almost 400.
It was a lot.
That's
Yeah,
very
and you
time-consuming.
want to do it very mindfully.
Yes,
Right,
yes.
right.
And all those artists had written narratives about themselves, background, and why they are proposing to have a piece of artwork in the Sunport and what that meant to them. So those artists put a lot of their own time into the process. So yeah, absolutely. We wanted to respect that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we just have a couple more minutes left, so anything else you want to share with us about being involved in this process, and any shout outs for people who are going to be traveling through the airport? Because we might have some of our travelers coming in the fall who are listening.
Yes.
Because that will be exciting.
Yes, it will be exciting. Balloon Fiesta, obviously, the busiest time of year for the Sunport. We get anywhere between 20 to 25,000 passengers each day coming through, in and out. So, I think main thing is look at this as a living representation of who we are. Each of the artists that were selected are at their pinnacle of skill. And that means they've done the self-exploration for years and years. And they're arriving at this point where what they are expressing says a lot about who they are, but also a lot about what they see in their community, about how they feel being New Mexican. And we're very proud of that, right? And that's why we're showcasing all these locally branded products and food and beverage establishments in the airport for the first time. Like, we always had green and red chili, but now we've got Sadie's selling it, right? Themselves, directly marketing to the customers. And that's new for us. And another thing that's new for us is things like, this incredible explosion of the brewery scene, right? We've got all these breweries all around the state now. We celebrate that too. We have several breweries that are represented at the airport. So I think, really the shout out is like, keep your eye out, notice what you like, talk about it on social media, send us a message at the city of Albuquerque, from Mayor Keller to myself at the Sunport. Let us know what you think, because most definitely intention is behind what you are seeing and what you're experiencing. We have thought about it and planned for hours and hours and hours, because that's what we believe showcases us the best that we can possibly showcase. So that's how we roll.
Well, and I just want to make a quick note. There's going to be QR codes with each of the installations,
there will
so
be.
that you can kind of dig behind the scenes, learn about the artist, learn about the piece. That's exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll have all the biographical information from each artist on the Sunport website, and we'll make sure that there's always opportunities also for anybody who's interested to sign up for a tour, because we do continue to give tours, and anything from the art to the Cavalcade of Wings historical model airplane exhibit that's there. We're also developing a history exhibit that will roll out before Balloon Fiesta. So speaking of the fall, you'll be able to see that too. And we're really excited about that, because it's all about Albuquerque's aviation history. With particularly respect paid to the folks whose first footprints are on that ground before any of this stuff was even built.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how about you? Any final thoughts, shout outs that you want to give?
I am just amazed at how far the Sunport Art Program has come. Back in the 90s and such, and even earlier than that. But to see it now, it just warms my heart. It's like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. So I'm pleased to have been a part of it in the early days and pleased to be a part of it now in this last round of selection committee. And I think it's just marvelous. And kudos to Manny and Jonathan and Doug and everybody at the airport who are embracing the art as a representation of who we are, not just at the airport, but as our community as a whole. So I think it's marvelous.
Wow.
Thank you, Regina. I mean, that means a lot to hear you say that. And you brought this gravitas to the process because of your history managing the art program at the Sunport and your expertise. But I also I want to go and just hug every committee member right now and say thank you because they were wonderful.
Yeah.
And the public arts team, oh my gosh, Sherry Brueggemann just retired.
Yeah.
And there are several members of the team that have helped us, from Matt Carter, Eric Werner, but especially Mandolin Sanchez and Noel Begay, who were at every meeting with Sherry. I just felt their support. They were always in our corner, and they were always making sure that, to keep an eye on the parameters and make sure we were staying on track and staying on agenda, and we did it. So thank you.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thanks again for joining me in the studio today.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Our pleasure. Yeah, great to be here.
If you, dear listeners, want to learn more about the Albuquerque International Sunport, visit abqsunport.com. To learn more about the Sunport Arts Program and the collection go to that site and click in Sunport-Arts-Program. You can find all of this information and even more on our newsletter. You'll find our newsletter on the Public Art webpage, so you can go to publicart/podcast. So stay tuned for our next episode series where we are going to follow up on some of the large projects that we've been discussing, Sunport, but also things we were discussing in previous episode series, like Public Art Census. And I just lost my place. So we hope that after you have listened to this episode that you will go out and take another look at Albuquerque's public art. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Joni.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate
Thanks, Joni.
Yeah.
Yeah.